How far are we willing to go for love? How far can we forgive while our hearts break into a million pieces? Meet the most amazing story of infidelity. He's been betrayed twice, or maybe even more. A story that shook his life and will shake you too. They swore fidelity to each other, but the shadow of betrayal grew deeper. He seeks the truth, she seeks forgiveness. The doors of their past are opening, revealing a mystery that will plunge them into a world of amazing adultery stories. Prepare to enter the tangled web of infidelity and open your eyes to the most stunning stories that will make you wonder, what are you willing to do for love? Are you ready to learn the secret of true love? Get ready to dive into amazing stories of wife cheating, dramas of fate. My wife cheated on me twice, and I'm still living with her, telling me in order. I met my wife at the Institute. She was 3 years younger than me. I was after the army, love, and after 6 months, we decided to live together. We rented an apartment and began to lead a rather unsatisfying student life. We lived soul to soul, enjoyed the little pleasures of life, and never really fought. Then my parents helped me buy my first apartment, and after about 5 years of living together, I finally started earning more or less money while I was still studying. I should note that in all 5 years, I never went out, never even flirted with anyone. I thought that my wife did not deserve it. Since everything was perfect in the domestic plan, the apartment was always well taken care of. My clothes were ironed. She always cooked delicious food. There were no claims of infidelity towards her either. She never flirted with anyone or anything like that. But then I started chatting with a couple at work. They had been in a relationship for literally a month. They were interesting and fun guys. Just at that point, my wife started working for the same company, and we began hanging out with their families, going on joint trips to the countryside, and visiting each other. Everything was as usual with friends, but one day a female friend asked me to give her a ride home after work, and I realized that she was into me. I have to say that I had noticed that I was attracted to her before, but she was a very pretty girl, and I was even impressed by that. I did not pay much attention to this because I had made a clear decision in life not to cheat on my wife, and small things like this would not change that. At the same time, my workload increased significantly, and I started working on Saturdays and Sundays to furnish our apartment and provide for my wife's needs. My wife started spending more time with our friends without me, going to the movies, the park, and having fun. My friend wasn't so concerned about money. He was from a well-to-do family and could afford to work without much effort. At the same time, the light girl toy friend again asked me to take her home. On the way, she confessed that she liked me and that they no longer have any relationship with her boyfriend and that they were about to break up. Anyway, we started kissing and she made me feel good, so to speak, in the car. After this, I quickly flew home. My conscience gnawed at me. I felt disgusted at the betrayal. I told this girl to keep quiet. Nothing was going to happen with her, and it was like nothing happened. Since then, I tried to avoid their company. My wife naturally continued to communicate with them, as I thought at the time. Sveta immediately quit her job, and I heard from her colleagues that she and her boyfriend broke up at that time. Then I wondered who my wife went to the movies with and to her house, if it had been a long time since they were a couple, and he was alone. Naturally, in the evening, I asked her this question, to which my wife said that yes, as it were, but she felt so sorry for their relationship that she was trying in every way to reconcile them. And the guy wants Sveta to come back. So I asked for her advice, and they talked for a long time. Anyway, that was the first time I realized that this was some kind of mistake and that my wife was lying to me. I called this girl and decided to ask what was really going on there. To which she herself told me that she broke up with him almost immediately after he was fired. And they do not communicate at all. But I wondered why he and my wife go to the movies. In general, I was torn by vague feelings, as if I had allowed too much. I think, even if there was flirting, I will forgive the betrayal. I think I will ask my wife to no longer communicate with him. And that will be the end of it. But I could not even imagine my wife's reaction. After this request, she almost caused a scene, saying that she and this guy are just friends and have a good friendly communication. She cannot stop talking to him because he's going through a hard time since Sveta left him. I was shocked. The rose-colored glasses came off, and I began to realize that I was either about to start growing horns or had already begun to grow, although I refused to believe it. I decided to find solid evidence because I did not want to just accuse and cause a scene. I kind of owe it to her and to him, so I started to pay attention and realized that my wife was hiding things on her social media, even though I had never had any reason to doubt her before. I saw her messages, her lovey-dovey comments, and how they wanted to be together. It was clear that they were having an affair. They were discussing the situation as if she wasn't pregnant after their last unprotected encounter. It only got worse. I was, if I may say so, incredibly lucky. My laptop, which I rarely used, was left open on his page. He was a musician, and every time they came to visit he would play music from his page, and there was a bloop. But he was discussing with his best friend how and where he was seeing my wife. The creepiest thing was one time when I was drunk in our apartment. I was asleep in another room, but they were in the kitchen. In general, I gave my wife a slap, a bag of clothes in her mouth, and kicked her out onto the street. She didn't resist and went to live with a friend. I called this woman and told her everything. I brought her home, and for 2 days we didn't leave each other's side, seeking revenge and reassessment. She was happy, immediately bringing her toothbrush and underwear to my apartment. My wife was seeing that jerk. At first, I even laughed at the situation, thinking it was like a joke. But after a couple of weeks, I found this woman almost unpleasant. In general, I found any excuse to kick her out of the apartment and lived alone. It was easier, without having to say a word or do any household chores, just able to make love. I didn't have any feelings for her at first, just that she was beautiful. At the same time, I felt anger towards my wife and a strong sense of nostalgia. I couldn't sleep at night. After a week, I realized I couldn't live without her. And I called her. We met, talked, and decided to start over. She immediately agreed, but it seemed to me without much enthusiasm. A few days later, I took her things from her friend's place, and my wife returned home. But she was no longer the same. She became distant. What was she doing when I went to bed? She would sit for a long time on social media in the kitchen, even though she used to not care about it. She always kept her phone to herself. The desire to make love was gone. She had a lot of tricks, like wanting to buy expensive things and go to clubs. I started to watch her and realized her relationship with that jerk wasn't over. She continued to meet and communicate with him, and she had a lot of shady affairs from her time in college. She started drinking too much, alone in the kitchen every night, drinking whiskey or some other alcohol. She started hanging out with a group of sketchy girls that I didn't know. Whenever I complained, she would say it was all nonsense and that she only loved me. She also lost the desire to do any housework. In the end, I called that jerk and told him I knew everything. If I found out one more time, I would kick him in the face. He vowed to break off all communication. In general, this whole situation went on for a month and a half. I tried as much as I could to regain his wife's attention, with flowers, gifts, surprises. Finally, at one point, she changed and became as she was before, loving me, planning our future, and taking care of the house. However, later on, I realized that their relationship had come to a natural end. Either he had cooled down towards her, or she towards him. But at that time, I didn't need to read any signs. Her behavior made everything clear. 6 months later, we got married, and a year after that, we welcomed a beautiful baby boy into our lives. I had no doubts that he was my son, as he looked very much like me. Our life became completely normal and prosperous. I started earning good money, and my wife and child had everything they needed. She bought expensive cribs, strollers, and other luxuries. We even started traveling abroad, not just to Turkey. I bought her a car, as it was difficult for her to go grocery shopping with a child. I always sent her with her mother-in-law and child to the sea for a month, so they wouldn't have to stay in our stuffy city. While we lived like that, we continued to grow and plan for the future. We wanted to buy a bigger and better apartment, as our current one was getting too crowded and uncomfortable. It had been 10 years of our life together and 5 years of that situation that we now only remembered as a life lesson. It taught us to never make the same mistake again and to cherish our relationship. I got a lot of work again and even got a new job. I also picked up more mature hobbies such as fishing, hunting, and boating, just like anyone else. I've never been one to just sit at home and drink beer in front of the TV on Saturdays. It's just not my thing. My wife finished her maternity leave and started looking for a job, as staying at home was not her thing either. She is smart and driven, and she landed a good job. In fact, she worked hard and earned a good salary. However, after a year of working, she started complaining about being overworked and tired all the time. Then, she made a friend at work, an authority figure who was 10 years older than her and had been through 3 marriages with a history of cheating on her 3rd husband. Knowing this, I didn't approve of their friendship, but I didn't say anything. My wife learned a lot from this friend, and she treated me with respect and kindness. Every evening, I would listen to her talk about her smart and insightful friend and how she had opened her eyes to many things. After a while, 2 more women joined their group at work, and they eventually decided to meet after hours on Friday. You know, like a corporate party. Asked permission, like we'll be at one of the 4 girls' house, we'll drink wine and play board games. Well, okay, let's go. Well, I also have corporate parties at work. It's still useful to communicate with colleagues in an informal setting. And after the first incident, I ruled out any possibility of adultery in the future. After the corporate party, she came at 4 a.m., drunk and disgruntled. She said that all this was not for her. She was tired, and she will not go to such a thing again. I scolded her a little for waking up the baby and me, but in the morning we forgot. I also often spend Friday nights with my colleagues, and it is a sin not to talk over a beer and a snack, but the doubt still crept in. It's one thing, an hour or 2 in the morning. It's another thing, it's 4 o'clock in the morning. The second call for me was when I flew in from a long business trip and she did not meet me. Before that, she always sat waiting in the kitchen with some delicious dinner, but this time she did not even come out. And then it was on to the classics. A complete utter fuck on me, absolute indifference to home and to the child. My son almost checked in with my mom. She kind of had a lot of work and didn't have time to take care of the garden. Then the unreal concern for her appearance. Fitness, tanning salon, clothes, corporate party again and again at 4 a.m. At the same time, she endlessly sent me pictures of how they sit with chicks and play cards. I have a sneaking suspicion that she was with this asshole, and 5 years ago, her behavior changed too much, and most importantly, she had a stupid smile sometimes in the evenings when she comes out of the other room. Then I realized that at these moments she was texting with her lover, and then somehow she left her phone on the bed. I opened it, and there was a text message saying good morning over some bullshit. I called her up and asked her what the fuck was going on. She tried to talk her way out of it, saying that there was one guy on her team, even though she had previously said that the team was exclusively female. She wrote that she was waiting for some kind of report at work. Okay, next I sent her, her mother, and our child to Sochi for 3 weeks. She didn't call me at all from there. When I called her in the evening, she was often busy or didn't have time to talk to me. She only complained about how she and my mom were having a bad time and how she was interfering with her rest. In general, she wasn't happy. Well, okay, next we find out what. We finally bought our dream, a huge 3-bedroom house. We slowly began to make repairs. During this process, while we were at the apartment, a friend came over to see her. She went out to talk in the car, and she forgot her phone. So I checked it and saw a message from her on Viber to her colleague. I put the phone back and checked it again in the evening. The message was gone, deleted. I packed up and left the house because I didn't want to fight in front of our baby. In the evening I called her and told her that I knew everything. She told me a version of the story where she had nothing to do with it. She said her colleague had a crush on her, and she didn't want to make a scene at work, so she didn't tell us. But this wasn't the first time I saw her behavior. She started dating her colleague. Her second version was that there was flirting, but it was normal and everyone does it. She said she was just going along with it. I told her I had read a previous message about intimacy. There was a long silence from her, and then she said, "Sorry, I'm stupid." My head was spinning, and I felt like I had been hit with a hammer. So while I was working hard and making repairs, she was sleeping with her colleague Roman for about 6 months. I got drunk and trashed her colleague's apartment with my friends. I even got hit in the face a couple of times. It turned out that all the corporate parties were held at his apartment, not with her girlfriends. He said he had nothing to do with it. She went to his place by herself and came up with excuses to see him. He said, "Why should I refuse if she's the one coming on to me?" In the end, he made a mess, moved back to his apartment, and found himself a new girlfriend. But history repeated itself. She still came home. My wife was crying on the phone, begging me to forgive her. Even our child was crying and giving the same excuses. She said I didn't give her enough attention and didn't appreciate her. For a year and a half now, I can't see her as anything but a whore. I feel sorry for my son. I grew up in a broken home and I know it's not good. I don't want to share any property with her. But I'm still planning to end things as soon as our child grows up. I'm constantly tormented by the thought that I only know about these two affairs, but there could be others. What do you think, dear listeners? I won't rant today, but I would rate this a 10 out of 10 on the Stag scale. Please share your scores in the comments. I also want to hear your opinions on this story and how you would rate the actions of the wife and husband. And I want to thank everyone Thank you to all those who watch our videos, give likes and dislikes, respond to our stories in every way, subscribe to our channel, and write comments. We truly appreciate your support.